What would you do if your HOA told you to rip out the driveway your father poured with his own two hands? Imagine opening your mailbox and finding a letter stamped non-compliant driveway surface remove in 30 days when that driveway has been part of your home for decades, holding every family car, every chalk drawing from your kids, every oil stain from late-night garage tinkering. My name's Frank Davis. I'm 60 years old, a retired mechanic, and I've lived in Brookstone Meadows since 1998. The driveway out front isn't just concrete, it's a piece of my family's history. My dad and I mixed the cement ourselves in the summer of 2000, sweating under the July sun, pouring it bucket by bucket. He said, "Son, this driveway will carry more than cars. It'll carry your life." And he was right. It's seen prom photos, moving fans, and grandkids learning to ride bikes. But to our HOA president, Karen, it was non-uniform pavement. Brookstone Meadows wasn't always like this. Back in the early years, neighbors had cookouts on Saturdays, lawn chairs out front, kids running wild between houses. The HOA kept the pool clean, trimmed the entrance hedges, and that was about it. Nobody cared if your shutters were teal or your roses were pink. Then came Karen. She swept in like a storm clipboard in one hand, the rulebook in the other. Within months of being elected HOA president, she rolled out community guidelines that read more like a military manual. Approved house colors 3, lawn length no taller than 2 inches, decorations only during seasonally appropriate periods. And then came her obsession with driveways. She declared all driveways must be HOA-approved brick pavers, neutral tones, installed by certified contractors. Anything else was a violation of uniform standards. Guess who became her first target? Me. I still remember that letter, stapled right to my garage door. Violation notice property, non-compliant concrete driveway, directive replaced with approved brick pavers within 30 days, penalty 200 HOA treads per day after deadline, $250 a day. For concrete my father poured with his bare hands. Nancy, my wife, held the letter and shook her head over my dead body. I clenched my fists, staring at the driveway, glinting in the afternoon sun. She has no idea what she's messing with. At the next HOA meeting, I stood up, binder in hand, photos spilling from the pockets, my dad mixing cement in 2000, my kids scribbling hopscotch, me fixing bikes on that same patch of pavement. This isn't just concrete, I told the room. It's family history. It's safe. It's solid. And it's older than your new rules. Karen didn't blink. Mr. Davis, sentiment doesn't equal compliance. The community requires a consistent aesthetic. Your driveway does not conform. Consistent aesthetic, I barked. This driveway has carried more of this neighborhood's history than your bylaws ever will. She smiled, thin as a razor, and tapped her gavel. Decision final. The fines started immediately. Week 1. Driveway violation $1. 750 accrued. Week 2 garage clutter visible. Week 3 improper lawn ornament placement. It was clear Karen wasn't just enforcing. She was punishing. So I bought a big red binder, stuffed every notice inside, and scrawled across the front in black marker, Driveway Defense Exhibit A. Nancy raised an eyebrow. "What are you doing?" "Frank?" I looked her dead in the eye, building my case. She wants a fight, she's got one. And then the neighbors started knocking. The Harrisons, with their asphalt driveway from the 80s, find. The Patels, with a gravel side path for their camper, find. Even old Mr. and Mrs. Cooper, who'd lived here since the neighborhood was built, got slapped with a notice for non-uniform edging. One by one, they brought me their letters. One by one, they stood on my non-compliant driveway, and said, "Enough." That night, under the glow of my garage light, with neighbors packed shoulder to shoulder, the fight for Brookstone Meadows began. That night on my driveway, with neighbors crowded close, I realized something. Karen might have her clipboard, but we had the numbers. That strip of concrete my dad poured had become more than a driveway. It was a gathering place, a fortress floor. The very next morning, I sat at my kitchen table with a fresh legal pad, poured myself a mug of coffee black enough to peel paint, and started drafting. By noon, the words were on paper. We, the homeowners of Brookstone Meadows, demand the immediate recall of HOA President Karen Whitfield for abuse of authority, selective enforcement, and harassment of residents. Nancy read over my shoulder, smirked, and said, short and sharp, "She gonna choke on that." "Good," I muttered, stapling it to a clipboard. The Harrisons signed first, right on the hood of Earl's old pickup. She wrote me up for asphalt cracks. Cracks. Frank, that driveway's older than half the people on this block. I'm in. The Patels added their names next. Mrs. Patel shook her head, her bangles clinking. She said, "Our gravel path is a violation. That path's been there 15 years. My kids learned to ride scooters on it. Karen can shove her rulebook." Mr. and Mrs. Cooper, who had lived here since the subdivision broke ground, signed to Mr. Cooper's voice cracked as he said, "Karen told us our edging stones were inconsistent. My wife picked those stones with her own hands. She's not here anymore. But they stay." By the end of the day, I had 15 signatures. By the end of the week, 40. Word spread like spilled oil down a driveway, fast, unstoppable, leaving a mark. Karen noticed. Of course she did. 2 days later, new violation letters rained across Brookstone Meadows. The Harrisons were cited for non-uniform garage door panels. The Patels got fined for improperly stored bicycles. The Coopers were hit with excessive yard ornaments. And me, 3 fines in one envelope. Driveway surface cracks spreading. Unapproved basketball hoop in view. Improper tool storage visible from garage. I slid each letter into the binder and marked a new tab in red, our retaliation. That binder was turning into a brick. But instead of breaking people down, Karen only steeled them. At church, neighbors cornered me in the fellowship hall, whispering, "Got the petition." At the grocery store, folks signed between the bread and the milk. At the diner, the waitress slid me her signature folded inside the menu and winked. By mid-month, we had 70 signatures, well over the majority required for recall. So we gathered again, not at the sterile community center Karen loved, but right here on my driveway. Lanterns lined the cracked edges. Kids chalked hopscotch on the pavement while adults crowded in. Buzzing with energy, Nancy passed around cider, and the smell of barbecue drifted down the street. I raised the clipboard high. Karen thought she could scare us with fines and flyers. But look around. We're not scared, we're united. This driveway stays. Your porches stay. Your gardens. Your sheds. Your gravel paths. They all stay. And on recall day, Karen goes. The cheer shook the night. Evelyn pounded her cane on the concrete like a war drum. Earl hollered to Frank's driveway, and the chant caught like fire until the whole block was shouting it. For the first time in a long while, Brookstone Meadows felt alive. But in the pit of my stomach, I knew better. Karen wasn't the type to surrender. No. She was already sharpening her next attack. Karen didn't wait long to hit back. The following week, every mailbox in Brookstone Meadows got stuffed with a glossy flyer. On the front was a photo of a perfect row of brick paver driveways, each identical, each soulless. Across the top in bold red letters, "Protect our property values, vote stability, Vote Karen. On the back, it got nastier. She accused agitators of spreading lies, destroying harmony, and dragging down home prices. And smack in the middle, bold as day, Frank Davis. Nancy read it aloud at the kitchen table, then laughed. Well, congratulations. Honey, you're officially the villain in her bedtime story. I slid it into my red binder, marked a new tab, propaganda. I smirked. If she's naming me, she's rattled. But the flyers weren't the end of it. A few days later, neighbors started finding community risk reports slipped under their doors. Each packet was filled with grainy photos, clearly taken at night. Cracked sidewalks, rusty tools leaning inside yards, boys left in driveways. Every picture stamped with captions like safety hazard or code violation. Mrs. Patel came to my garage, furious, waving her copy. Frank. She had someone sneaking around my backyard with a camera. At midnight, my children sleep 10 feet from that spot. I clenched my jaw, looked down at the driveway under my boots, and thought Karen thinks shadows will scare us. She doesn't know we've already stepped into the light. And then came the fines, like bullets from a machine gun. The Harrison's garage, paint, discoloration. The Patels, excessive children's toys visible. The Cooper's improper lawn edging stones, repeat violation. And me, 4 in 2 days. Driveway cracking exceeds acceptable threshold. Unapproved lawn ornament placement. Basketball hoop improperly stored. Excessive oil stains visible. I filed them under a new tab, harassment. That binder was so heavy now, you could use it as a doorstop. But here's what Karen didn't understand. The more she pushed, the harder we pushed back. At church that Sunday, Earl stood up during announcements, waving a violation letter. If Karen thinks my rusty grill is going to tank the neighborhood, then she's got less sense than a busted lawnmower. The congregation erupted in laughter and clapping. At the diner, someone taped one of her flyers to the bulletin board and wrote across it in marker comedy section. The tide was turning. Karen's threats didn't make us hide, they made us louder. By the end of the month, the recall election date was set. That night, we gathered on my driveway again. Lanterns lined the edges. Kids drew chalk murals across the cracks, and the crowd spilled out into the street. I raised the binder high. Karen's throwing everything at us fines. Threats, even midnight photos. But look at us. We're still here. And when recall day comes, we'll remind her Brookstone Meadows isn't hers to rule. It's ours to live in. The cheer that rolled across the block was like thunder. Evelyn smacked her cane on the concrete, chanting, "Our driveway, our rules," until the whole crowd picked it up. Voices echoing down the cul-de-sac. Karen thought she could isolate me. Instead, she'd united us all. But in the pit of my gut, I knew she wasn't finished. Not yet. The day of the recall election landed cold and gray, like even the sky was waiting to see what Brookstone Meadows would decide. By 9 in the morning, the parking lot outside the community center was jammed. Folks walked in, bundled in coats, ballots in hand, faces tense. Nobody was joking around this time. This was serious. Inside, rows of folding chairs filled fast. At the front of the room sat a plain ballot box. Guarded by volunteers we all trusted. Every slip of paper that dropped in made a sharp thunk that echoed across the silence. And at the head table sat Karen. She wore a blazer the color of wet cement, her gavel polished, her smile stretched thin as fishing line. Her eyes flicked across the crowd. Counting heads. You could see it, she knew the numbers weren't in her favor. When my turn came, I stepped forward, ballot in hand. Karen's gaze met mine, hard and cold. I folded the slip, dropped it into the box, and the thunk was louder than it should have been, like a hammer on steel. Earl leaned toward me as I walked back. Sounded like freedom. The vote counting was tense. Volunteers huddled in the corner, tallying one slip at a time. The whole room was so quiet you could hear Evelyn's cane tapping against the tile floor with every anxious beat. Nancy squeezed my hand so tight my knuckles cracked. Finally, Carla, one of the counters, stood up, paper in her hand. Her voice trembled at first, then grew firm. Votes for recall 98, votes against 22. The room froze. For half a heartbeat. Silence. Then it exploded. Cheers. Clapping. Stomping feet. Evelyn burst into tears. The Coopers hugged like teenagers. Mrs. Patel shouted. The driveway stays, and the whole crowd roared with her. But Karen wasn't finished. She slammed her gavel so hard the crack rang like a gunshot. "This vote is illegitimate," she screamed. Face red. "You're tearing this neighborhood apart. You'll regret this." No one listened. The roar of relief drowned her out. She stood, slammed her binder shut, and spat. "This isn't over." Then she stormed out, heels snapping like firecrackers against the tile. The door slammed behind her, and for the first time in years, Brookstone Meadows felt lighter. That evening, the driveway was alive. Lanterns lined the edges. Kids chalked victory across the cracks, and neighbors crowded shoulder to shoulder, laughing, hugging, toasting. Someone even set up a grill. The smoke and the cheer rolled together into the night. Earl raised his thermos high to Frank's driveway, the one she couldn't pave over. The shout that followed rattled windows. For the first time in years, Brookstone Meadows felt free. But as I stood there, binder tucked under my arm, I knew one thing: Karen wasn't the type to disappear. She'd be back. And the next round, she'd play dirtier than ever. For a little while, it felt like we'd won for good. The fines stopped. Mailboxes were empty of threats. Neighbors started breathing easier. Evelyn rehung her bird feeder. The Harrisons painted their garage door bright blue just because they could. And kids covered my driveway in chalk drawings like it was their personal art gallery. But peace doesn't last long when someone like Karen is lurking in the background. She wasn't the type to fade away. She was the type to plot. The first strike came in a thick envelope, hand-delivered by a deputy. "Frank," he said, looking tired, "you've been served." Inside was a lawsuit. Karen accused me personally of defamation, harassment, and emotional trauma. She claimed I'd led a smear campaign, ruined her reputation, and of course demanded that my illegal driveway be demolished as restitution. Nancy read the pages twice and slammed them on the table. "She calls you a harasser. She stalked Mrs. Patel's yard with a camera at midnight." Still, seeing my name on legal documents made my stomach twist. I called my buddy Jeff, a lawyer. He flipped through the packet, chuckled, and said, "Frank, this is a textbook slap suit. Judges hate this kind of nonsense." He was right. At the hearing, the judge dismissed it in under 15 minutes. But when Karen walked out of that courtroom, she shot me a look that could have cracked concrete. Her second strike came at night. Around midnight, our motion lights snapped on. My camera caught two figures creeping onto my driveway, one with a sledgehammer, the other with a can of spray paint. They managed to smash a corner of the curb and scrawl "violation" in red across the concrete before bolting. Earl's old hunting cam caught their license plate. Guess what? Belonged to a contractor Karen had used for community inspections. The sheriff filed charges. Karen denied everything. Of course, but no one in Brookstone Meadows believed her. Then the new board opened the HOA books, and what they found made everyone's jaws hit the floor. Tens of thousands of dollars gone funneled into consulting for Karen's cousin, legal retainers with no lawyers attached, even charges at boutiques and luxury hotels. At the next meeting, Carla projected the numbers on a big screen. Gasps filled the room. She fined me for sidewalk chalk. Mrs. Patel cried, while she bought handbags with our dues. Carla's voice was steady. This has already been forwarded to the county prosecutor. The cheer that followed rattled the walls. But Karen's last strike was the nastiest. The week before Christmas, Earl came pounding on my door at midnight. Frank, get your boots. Down at the drainage ditch. Now. We ran with flashlights. The lock on the stormwater gate had been cut. Water was rushing where it shouldn't, threatening to flood half the lower lots, including my house. Deputy Collins shook his head. This wasn't an accident. Somebody wanted damage. Nancy grabbed my arm. Eyes wide. She'd flood homes, families, just to get even. I stared at the cracks in my driveway, glowing under the moonlight, and clenched my fists. She's desperate. I said, and desperate people are dangerous. But here's what Karen didn't realize. Desperate moves don't break people who've already stood together. They just make us stronger. She thought lawsuits, vandalism, and sabotage would crush Brookstone Meadows. Instead, she forged us into something tougher than concrete. And like my driveway, we weren't going anywhere. January brought ice on the rooftops. But Brookstone Meadows was warmer than it had been in years. After Karen's sabotage stunt at the drainage ditch, neighbors weren't cowering, they were fired up. The whole community realized this wasn't just about one driveway. It was about every family memory she tried to bulldoze. Carla, now the acting HOA chair, called for a neighborhood gathering. Not at the community hall Karen once lorded over, but right there on my non-compliant driveway. We lined the edges with lanterns. Neighbors dragged out folding chairs. And Nancy set a pot of chili on a portable burner. Kids drew chalk murals across the cracks' flowers. Cars. Even a giant cartoon Karen with devil horns that made everyone laugh until their ribs hurt. When the crowd settled, Carla stood at the top of my porch steps. Voice strong. This driveway isn't just Frank's. It's ours. It's where we stood when Karen tried to crush us with fines. Where we said enough. I propose we officially declare it a Brookstone Meadows Heritage Landmark. The cheer nearly lifted the shingles off my roof. Evelyn banged her cane on the pavement like a drum. Earl hollered, "Long live the driveway," and for once, the laughter didn't sound nervous, it sounded free. From that night forward, the HOA was different. Instead of bleeding us with fines, the new board started, the neighbor fund. Dues went into helping each other, fixing fences, patching roofs, even buying Mr. and Mrs. Cooper a new mailbox after Karen had slapped them with violation after violation. Instead of stripping individuality, the board launched a community treasures registry. The Harrisons' cracked asphalt protected. The Patels' gravel path officially preserved. Evelyn's bird feeder listed as a historic feature. Everything Karen once labeled non-compliant became a badge of pride. And people beyond Brookstone Meadows started noticing. Letters came in from across the country. From Michigan, they tried to tear down the swing set my dad built. Your fight gave us courage. From Arizona, we were fined for our front garden boxes. After hearing about you, we're pushing back. From Texas, a photo of an entire neighborhood gathered on someone's cracked driveway, holding a banner that read, "Stand like Brookstone." One evening, Nancy and I sat at the kitchen table, reading those letters. She touched my hand and whispered, "Frank, your dad thought he poured concrete. He didn't know he laid a foundation for half the country." I swallowed hard. She was right. By spring, we held the first annual driveway festival. Neighbors decorated their driveways with lanterns, murals, and flowers. Some set up lemonade stands. Others played music from their garages. Families strolled from house to house, sipping cider, kids laughing, chalk dust on their knees. And at the end of the walk, my driveway, lanterns glowed along the edges. Ribbons flapped in the cool breeze, and kids sprawled across the steps with cotton candy. Carla unveiled a bronze plaque bolted to the curb. The Davis driveway, poured 2000 by James and Frank Davis, preserved as a symbol of community spirit. The cheer that followed rattled the block. Evelyn wiped tears from her cheeks. Earl slapped my back so hard I nearly dropped my cider. Even little Tommy Patel leaned down to trace the letters with his finger, whispering, "This is history." Standing there, looking at the old cracks filled with chalk art and glowing lantern light, I realized something. This driveway wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to Brookstone Meadows. Karen tried to erase it. Instead, she made it eternal. By summer, the story of our illegal driveway had broken past the gates of Brookstone Meadows. First it was a local reporter with a notepad and a scratchy recorder. Then a television van rolled in, parking right on the curb. Karen once threatened to fine me for. Before long, our cracked concrete was on the evening news. The headline splashed across the screen. "The driveway that wouldn't break." I stood there on camera, binder in hand, neighbors flanking me, and told the truth about Karen's fines, the threats, the recall, about how this old patch of concrete, poured by my father and me 20 years ago, became the floor where a community finally stood tall. The clip spread online like wildfire. Comments, shares, phone calls, letters. Suddenly, our little cul-de-sac was a beacon for anyone fed up with HOA bullies. A man in Ohio wrote, "They told me to tear down my garage because it was too industrial looking. After your story, I fought back and I won." A woman in Georgia shared our HOA banned clotheslines. "We thought we couldn't do anything until we saw your driveway." An entire neighborhood in Texas mailed us a photo, everyone standing on a cracked driveway, holding a sheet that read, "Roots run deep. We stand with Brookstone." Nancy and I sat at the table one night reading them. Letters spread out like a quilt. She put her hand on mine and said, "Frank, your dad thought he built a driveway. Turns out, he built a movement." Invitations started rolling in. One weekend I drove out to a nearby town where their HOA had banned backyard fire pits. Families were angry but scared to challenge the board. I stood in their community hall, held up my heavy red binder, and said, "They can throw paper. They can bark rules, but they can't take what you refuse to surrender if you stand together." By the end of the night, that neighborhood voted to recall their board. On the way home, Earl slapped the dashboard and laughed so hard he nearly spilled his coffee. "Frank, you've gone from fixing cars to fixing neighborhoods." Back in Brookstone, we doubled down. The new board launched the heritage map. Every so-called violation Karen once wrote became a point of pride. The Harrisons' cracked asphalt marked as a community treasure. The Patels' gravel strip registered. Evelyn's bird feeder highlighted as historic. Kids ran around with copies of the map, checking off each spot like a scavenger hunt, learning the stories behind them, and at the very center, the crown jewel, my driveway. A bronze plaque gleamed on the curb. The Davis driveway, poured 2000, preserved by the people of Brookstone Meadows. Neighbors touched it as they passed, like it was a good luck charm. That summer, we held the first driveway festival. Every house decked out their driveways, ribbons, lanterns, chalk murals, even little concerts from garage bands. Families strolled, sipped lemonade, sampled barbecue. Kids played hopscotch across cracks Karen once called unsightly. At sunset, everyone gathered on my driveway. Lanterns glowed, the bronze plaque shone, and neighbors packed shoulder to shoulder. Carla took the mic. This driveway was almost ripped up. Instead, it became the place we found our voice. Let it remind us all, home isn't about compliance. It's about community. The cheer rolled across the block like thunder. Evelyn cried. Earl toasted with his thermos. The Patel kids sat cross-legged on the curb, staring up at the glowing lanterns like they were watching history being made. And then came the moment I'll never forget. A family from Illinois drove 10 hours just to stand here. Their little boy ran his hand across the plaque and whispered, "Daddy, this is the driveway that beat the bad lady." I had to turn away, throat tight, because yes, it was. Karen wanted this slab of concrete gone. Instead, she'd built it into legend. By autumn, Brookstone Meadows had changed forever. The fear that once hid in every mailbox was gone. In its place, porches glowing, kids chalking driveways without a care, wind chimes singing from every corner. The neighborhood felt alive, finally ours again. Karen was history. She sold her house quietly, disappeared without a word. No farewell party. No neighbors waving goodbye. Just a bitter shadow, fading from the block. But the thing she hated most, the old, cracked concrete in front of my house, stood stronger than ever. The county came out one crisp October afternoon with a bronze plaque. Neighbors crowded around as officials bolted it right into the curb. The Davis driveway, board 2000 by James and Frank Davis, preserved as a symbol of community spirit. The crowd erupted. Evelyn smacked her cane against the pavement like a drum roll. Earl hollered. To the driveway that outlasted Karen, the Patel kids traced their fingers over the letters, whispering like they were touching something sacred. Nancy leaned against me, eyes wet. "Frank," she said softly, "your dad would have been proud." That night, lanterns swayed from mailboxes, fire pits glowed, and music drifted down the block. My driveway was packed, neighbors sitting on lawn chairs, kids sprawled out with chalk-stained knees. Laughter, bouncing off every wall. I sat on the porch swing, binder resting by my side. For months it had been a shield, proof of every petty threat. Now it was just a relic of a battle we'd already won. Nancy curled close, sipping cider. "Funny?" She said. She thought this driveway was the problem. Turns out, it was the cure. I smiled, running my hand across the rough surface. Cracks, stains, all of it. It was beautiful. Karen had tried to erase it. Instead, she'd made it eternal. And here's what I've carried ever since: there will always be Karens. People who wield bylaws like weapons, who hide behind uniformity while they crush individuality. But there will also always be driveways, porches, sheds, gardens, pieces of ourselves rooted in love and memory. So when the letter shows up in your mailbox, when someone tells you to tear down what matters most, what will you do? Fold or fight? Me, I thought. And every creak of a lawn chair, every chalk drawing smeared across these cracks, every cheer that still echoes on this street answers the same way. Stand